A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hello, Herman and Corin. So I thought I'd send in a practical question today. Very specific, but that is what we do on this podcast. We take these very niche topics, and there you go. You have a couple of noise samples. So you might be able to hear I'm currently surrounded on all sides by wailing children. One of them is my own little Ezra in the other room, and then you've got some other gremlins coming out of the hall, and they're all doing their kind of baby wailing thing, fussing. And what I'd love to ask about, Herman and Corin, is we talked about parenting for noise-sensitive people in another episode. We've talked in a lot of different episodes actually about the sensory world and how different sensory stressors can cause a lot of stress. I think I did a very simple episode a while back that was scrubbed in our first scrubbing of the past episodes, and that was the simple question: is it safe? Is there any kind of headphone that is earplug that is actually safe to use as a parent? Because you need to hear them, crying for help, crying. You don't want to hermetically block off your hearing. Needless to say, that wouldn't be safe at all. But perhaps some way that you can tone down some of the harsher points of the frequency to just give you a little bit more peace of mind without compromising your situational awareness. And that is exactly, as we move past the is it safe and something people do conversation, because we talked about the loop experience, headphones as earplugs as being one product designed to do exactly this. And your response, I can summarize the episode as we don't have it now in our catalog, was it's definitely something that is safe in with certain parameters and something that people actually do. In today's episode, I'd like to go into the actual specifics of what that looks like, because I am going to go to an audiologist when we get back to normal in order to ask them if they can make a pair of custom earplugs for this requirement. The Loop Engage 2 are excellent, but it's one of those products that I haven't been able to find someone who will ship to Israel. And I think with the current situation with the war, it's not going to be easy to do that anytime soon. And I have to say, tremendous experience with custom earplugs. In fact, I think getting my first pair, which is a pair that I sleep with, was kind of a turning point for me. I went from being really stressed by the sound of honking in our apartment all the time to when you feel like you have something, a weapon, if you will, it takes away that sense of being under auditory assault in your own home. There's something you can use even if you would rather not be wearing headphones, earplugs, but it's an option. So Herman and Corin, I'm going to get into the audiologist whenever they can see me, but I can recall the process. It's a very consultative process. They ask you, like, what is it? What kind of sounds do you find bothersome? And maybe for people living with misophonia as well, this might be useful to kind of prep what you want to know in advance so that you can make the most of that time with the audiologist, because it's typically a quite quick consultation. Then they're putting the foam in your ear and then getting it made off. So if one was finding that certain sounds in their environment were causing them stress, impairing their ability to focus, and they wanted to go into an audiologist, not for blocker earplugs, but for stuff that would just, as I said, take the edge off. What kind of attenuation are we looking at in terms of decibels? And what options are there on the market for those who are also living with this and would like to be the best version of themselves? I think that probably will benefit everyone in their surroundings to do so. And that's it, really. Over to you, Herman and Corin.
You know, Herman, listening to Daniel's prompt today, I could feel my own heart rate ticking up just a little bit. That sound of multiple children crying at different pitches, the overlapping chaos of a busy household, it is a very specific kind of sensory pressure. I think most parents, and even just people who are sensitive to noise, know that feeling where your brain starts to redline.
It is the definition of a high-stress acoustic environment. And Herman Poppleberry here, ready to dive into the physics of peace and quiet, or at least the physics of peace and quiet that still lets you know when the baby needs a diaper change. Daniel is really touching on something we have explored before, but the practical side of it, especially when you are looking at custom solutions because the off-the-shelf options like the loop Engage 2 are not easily available in Jerusalem right now. That is where it gets really interesting.
Right, and it is a common problem. We live in a world that is getting louder, and for someone with misophonia or just a high level of sensory processing, the modern home can feel like a battlefield. Daniel mentioned wanting to take the edge off without hermetically blocking sound. He wants to maintain situational awareness. So, Herman, let us start with the numbers. When we talk about taking the edge off, what are we actually looking for in terms of decibel attenuation?
This is the crucial starting point, corn. Most people think more is better. They see a foam earplug at the pharmacy that says 32 decibels of noise reduction and they think, great, total silence. But 32 decibels is a massive amount of attenuation. Because the decibel scale is logarithmic, not linear, every 10 decibels represents a 10-fold increase in sound energy and roughly a doubling or halving of perceived loudness.
So, if you drop the sound by 10 decibels, it sounds half as loud to the human ear?
And if you go to 20 decibels, it is effectively a quarter as loud. For what Daniel is describing, what we call situational awareness or environmental transparency, you are usually looking in the range of 5 to 15 decibels of attenuation. If you go much higher than 15, you start to lose the ability to track conversation in a noisy room, or, more importantly for a parent, you might miss the subtle cues of a child's voice from another room.
That makes sense. You want to filter, not block. I remember when we talked about auditory trespass back in episode 737, we touched on how certain frequencies are more invasive than others. Is it just about the total decibels, or are there specific frequencies Daniel should be asking his audiologist to target?
That is the million-dollar question. Standard foam earplugs are terrible for this because they block high frequencies much more effectively than low frequencies. That is why everything sounds muffled or underwater when you wear them. But a child's cry is often packed with high-frequency energy, specifically in the 2000 to 4000 Hertz range. It is evolutionarily designed to pierce through noise. If you use a flat response filter, which is what musicians use, it reduces the volume across all frequencies equally. This keeps the sound natural, just quieter.
So, for the audiologist consultation Daniel is planning, he should be looking for something like an etymologic research filter, right? I know they have the ER9, ER15, and ER25.
Precisely. The ER9 is often the sweet spot for sensory overload. It provides about 9 decibels of flat attenuation. It sounds like nothing until you take them out and realize how much louder the world actually is. It just lowers the ceiling on the environment. But here is the thing Daniel needs to prepare for when he sits down with that audiologist in Jerusalem. He needs to be very clear that he is not looking for hearing protection in the industrial sense. He is looking for sensory management.
That is a big distinction. Most audiologists are trained to help people hear better, or to protect workers from jet engines and jackhammers. Dealing with a parent who has misophonia or sensory stress might be a bit outside their daily routine. How should he frame that conversation so they do not just give him a standard solid silicone plug?
He should use the term filtered earplugs or musician's plugs. He needs to explain that he requires a vented mold with an interchangeable filter. The venting is key, Corn. Have you ever noticed how your own voice sounds like a booming bass drum when you plug your ears?
Oh yeah, the occlusion effect. It is incredibly distracting if you are trying to talk to someone while wearing earplugs.
It makes your own internal sounds, like chewing or breathing or speaking, feel amplified inside your head. For a parent, that is a nightmare because you need to be able to speak comfortably to your kids. A custom mold from an audiologist can be made with a hollow bore or a specific tuned vent that allows that pressure to escape, significantly reducing the occlusion effect. Daniel should tell the audiologist, I want a flat response filter preferably around 9 to 12 decibels, and I need the mold designed to minimize the occlusion effect so I can speak without my voice booming.
That is great advice. I think it is also worth mentioning that misophonia is not just about the volume, it is about the emotional trigger of specific sounds. For Daniel, it sounds like the crying is the trigger. Does a flat filter help with the trigger, or is it just making the trigger quieter?
It is a bit of both. By reducing the overall intensity, you are keeping the nervous system from hitting that fight or flight threshold as quickly. We talked about the sensory budget in episode 886. Every loud noise, every sharp cry, eats into your daily budget of patience and calm. If you could reduce the tax on each sound by 10 decibels, your budget lasts much longer.
I like that analogy. It is like an interest rate on your sanity. Now, since Daniel mentioned that the Loop Engage 2 is hard to find in Israel right now, what are the actual brands or labs the audiologist might be using? If he goes into a clinic in Jerusalem, what names should he be looking for?
In Israel, a lot of the high-end custom work is done through local labs like Steiner or Mattotone that partner with international companies. He might see names like Westone or Starkey. But specifically for filters, he should ask if they use Etymotic or ACS filters. ACS is a British company that makes some of the best silicone custom plugs in the world. Their Pro Series filters are incredible. They have a Pro 17, which might be a bit much for Daniel, but they also have a Pro 10.
A 10 decibel reduction seems like exactly what he is asking for. It is that taking the edge off level.
Right. And the beauty of the custom mold is the comfort. Daniel mentioned he has a pair for sleeping that changed his life. Sleeping plugs are usually solid silicone because you want maximum blockage. But for daytime use, you want a softer, medical-grade silicone that can stay in for hours without causing irritation. The fit is everything. If the fit is off by even a millimeter, you either lose the seal and the noise leaks in, or you get a pressure point that becomes painful after 20 minutes.
That brings up a good point about the consultation itself. When the audiologist takes the impression of his ear, is there anything he should do? I have heard people say you should keep your mouth open or closed depending on what the plugs are for.
For musicians or people who will be talking while wearing them, many audiologists recommend using a bite block, which is just a small piece of foam you bite on to keep your jaw slightly open. This mimics the shape of the ear canal when you are speaking or eating. Our ear canals actually change shape when our jaw moves. If they take the impression while your mouth is closed, the plugs might lose their seal or become uncomfortable when you start talking to your kids.
That is a pro tip right there. I bet a lot of people get custom plugs and then wonder why they feel weird when they are having a conversation.
It makes a huge difference. Also, Daniel should ask about the material. For sleep, people often prefer a very soft silicone. For daytime, some prefer a slightly firmer silicone that is easier to pop in and out. Since he is a parent, he might be taking these in and out as the chaos levels fluctuate. He should ask for a medical-grade finish that is easy to clean. Kids are sticky, life is messy, and you do not want your expensive custom filters getting gunked up.
Let us talk about the situational awareness aspect again. You mentioned the ER9 filters. How do those actually work to let speech through while cutting noise? It feels a bit like magic to the uninitiated.
It is not magic, it is just clever acoustics. These filters use a combination of a diaphragm and a small orifice to create an acoustic resistance. They are tuned to follow the natural resonance of the open ear. Normally, your ear canal has a natural boost around 3000 Hz, which helps you hear speech. Standard earplugs block that boost. A high-quality filtered plug is designed to recreate that natural resonance, just at a lower overall volume. So, the frequency balance remains the same as if you were not wearing anything at all.
So, it is like turning down the volume knob on the entire world, rather than just throwing a blanket over your head.
And for someone in a house with crying babies, that means you can still hear the pitch and the urgency of the cry. You can still tell where the sound is coming from, which is the localization part of situational awareness, but the physical pain of the high-frequency spike is muted.
I think that is a really important point for parents who feel guilty about using earplugs. There is this social stigma, right? Like, if you are wearing earplugs, you are tuning out your children. But if you are using a 10 decibel filter, you are actually probably becoming a better parent, because you are not in a state of constant neurological agitation.
I totally agree. We have a conservative worldview that values family and the hard work of raising children, but that does not mean you have to suffer needlessly. In fact, Being a stable, calm presence for your kids is the goal. If a small piece of medical-grade silicone helps you stay calm when Ezra is having a meltdown, that is a win for the whole family. It is about personal responsibility and using the tools available to be the best version of yourself.
It is like that old airplane analogy. You have to put on your own oxygen mask first. If your sensory system is crashing, you cannot effectively care for anyone else. Now, Herman, what about the electronic options? We have been talking about passive filters, but are there active options that might be better for Daniel, or is that overkill?
There are active options, like the ones from Etymotic or even some high-end hunting earplugs that compress loud sounds while amplifying quiet ones. But for Daniel's specific situation, I think passive is better. Electronic plugs require batteries. They can sometimes have a slight hiss or white noise, and they can feel more artificial. A high-quality passive filter is foolproof. It does not need to be charged, it does not break if you drop it, and the sound quality is generally more natural.
And given the current situation in Israel, having something that does not rely on a charging cable or a specific app is probably a plus. Simplicity is a virtue.
Now, there is one more thing Daniel should consider, and that is the color and visibility. Some people want their plugs to be invisible, so they get clear silicone. But if you drop a clear silicone plug in a house with kids and toys and chaos, you will never find it again. I always recommend getting a bright, solid color. Neon orange, blue, something that stands out on the floor.
That is very practical. I can just imagine Daniel crawling around on the rug trying to find a clear plug while the kids are running over his hands.
It is a nightmare. Also, he should ask for a cord. Most custom plugs can be made with a removable cord that connects the two. If he needs to take them out quickly to take a phone call or talk to a neighbor, he can just let them hang around his neck. It prevents him from losing one in the heat of the moment.
So, to summarize the audiologist visit, ask for custom-molded medical-grade silicone plugs with interchangeable flat response filters, specifically aiming for about 10 decibels of attenuation. Ask for a bite block impression to reduce the occlusion effect, and maybe go for a bright color with a cord.
That is the perfect checklist. And if the audiologist seems confused, just tell them you want the same setup they would give a professional orchestral musician who needs to hear their own instrument and the conductor, but needs to protect against the brass section. That is a scenario they will definitely understand.
That is a great way to frame it. The crying baby is the trumpet player in the back row who does not know how to play quietly.
And in a small apartment in Jerusalem, that trumpet is very, very loud.
I want to touch on the misophonia aspect again. We have talked about this in episode 435, specifically for sensory overload. Sometimes, even with the best earplugs, the visual of the chaos can still be a trigger. Do you think there is a benefit to combining these earplugs with other sensory strategies?
Oh, definitely. Sensory management is rarely about a single tool. It is about the environment. But the earplugs are the foundation because sound is the most invasive sense. You can close your eyes, you can move away from a bad smell, but you cannot naturally turn off your ears. Once you have the noise under control, your brain has more bandwidth to deal with the visual clutter or the physical demands of parenting.
It is about reducing the total load. If you can take that 10 decibel load off your ears, maybe the fact that there are toys all over the floor does not feel like such a catastrophe.
It lowers your overall cortisol levels. There is actually some fascinating research on the physiological effects of noise on parents. Chronic noise exposure leads to higher baseline stress hormones, which affect sleep, digestion, and even heart health. So Daniel is not just asking for a luxury here, he is asking for a health intervention.
I think that is a powerful way to look at it, especially in a place like Israel where the baseline stress level can already be quite high due to the geopolitical situation. Anything you can do to control your immediate environment and protect your mental health is vital.
And it is worth noting that for our listeners in the United States or Europe, the brands might be easier to access, but the principles are the same. Whether you are using a loop engage or a custom Westone plug, you are looking for that transparent, low-level attenuation.
You know, we should probably mention the cost. Custom plugs are not cheap. They are an investment. But compared to the cost of a high-end pair of noise-canceling headphones that you cannot realistically wear while playing with your kids, the value is there.
They usually last 5 to 7 years, or until your ear shape changes significantly. If you divide the cost over 5 years, it is pennies a day for a significant increase in quality of life. I think it is one of the best investments a noise-sensitive person can make.
I agree. I remember when I got my first pair of high-quality filters. Not even custom ones, just the off-the-shelf Etymotics. I wore them to a wedding, and for the first time in my life, I left a wedding without a headache. It was a revelation. I could still talk to people at my table, but the band did not feel like they were playing inside my skull.
That is the magic of the flat response. It preserves the social experience while removing the physical trauma. And for a parent, every day can feel like a wedding with a very loud, very disorganized band.
That is a very apt description of life with a toddler. So, Armin, are there any other brands or specific technologies on the horizon for 2026 that Daniel should be aware of? Anything that might be coming out soon that could change the game?
There is some interesting work being done with what they call membrane filters. Instead of just an acoustic resistance, they use a very thin membrane that responds more dynamically to pressure. Some of these claim to offer even better speech clarity while still providing attenuation. Brands like Minuendo are doing some interesting things in the adjustable space, where you can actually turn a little dial on the plug to change the level of attenuation.
An adjustable custom plug. That sounds like the Holy Grail.
They are getting there. Right now, the adjustable ones are mostly universal fit, but I expect we will see more custom integrated adjustable filters soon. For someone like Daniel, being able to dial it up to 15 decibels when things are really crazy and then dial it down to 5 when things quiet down would be incredible. But for now, the interchangeable filters are the most reliable way to go.
It is like having different lenses for your glasses. You pick the one that fits the light level of the day.
And I would tell Daniel, do not be afraid to buy 2 sets of filters. Get the 9 decibel and the 15 decibel. They are usually easy to pop in and out yourself. If you are having a particularly sensitive day, or if you know the house is going to be full of extra kids, put the 15s in.
That is great advice. It gives you a sense of agency over your environment. I think that is a huge part of managing misophonia and sensory stress. The feeling that you are not just a victim of the noise, but that you have tools to manage it.
That psychological shift is half the battle. Just knowing the plugs are in your pocket can lower your stress levels because you know you have an exit ramp if things get too loud.
Well, I think we have given Daniel a lot to take to his audiologist. It is a practical, technical approach to a very human problem. And honestly, it is one of those things that sounds small but can have a massive ripple effect on a person's daily happiness.
It really can. And I hope Ezra and the other little ones are giving him a bit of a break today. But if not, at least he has a plan.
Definitely. And before we wrap up, I want to say to everyone listening, if you have found these kinds of technical deep dives into everyday problems useful, we would really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. It genuinely helps other people find the show, and we love hearing your feedback.
It really does help. We are over 900 episodes in, and it is the community and the prompts from people like Daniel that keep us going. We are all just trying to navigate this weird, loud world together.
Well said, Herman. You can find all our past episodes, including the ones we mentioned today, at myweirdprompts.com. We have a full archive there and an RSS feed so you never miss a discussion.
And if you are in Jerusalem or anywhere else and have a weird prompt of your own, there is a contact form on the website. We would love to hear from you.
Thanks for listening to My Weird Prompts. I am Corn Poppleberry.
And I am Herman Poppleberry. We will see you next time.
Take it easy, everyone, and keep those ears protected.
But not too protected. Stay aware.
Right. Situational awareness is key. Catch you in the next one.
Bye for now.
So, Herman, one last thing. Do you think the audiologist will be surprised when a sloth and a donkey walk into the clinic?
Corn, we have lived in Jerusalem for years. People have seen much stranger things than a couple of Poppleberry brothers looking for earplugs.
Fair point. This city has seen it all.
Now, let us go see if Daniel needs help with those kids before he gets his new plugs.
Good idea. I will bring the snacks. You bring the patients.
Deal.
All right, for real this time. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye, everyone.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from keep weird in mind.